Almost exactly a year ago, I released a Legends video covering every TIE Fighter variant. Since that time, we've had a few additions to the canon roster, so I think it's time for a canon-only version. Starting with the basics is, of course, the TIE Fighter. They were the standard starfighter of the Galactic Empire, and the template on which all of the following variants were based. Armed with 2 laser cannons, they were fast and maneuverable but lacked shielding or hyperdrives. Cheap to make and easy to destroy, they were the epitome of Imperial expendability. The TIE Advanced V1 was an experimental model that was far less expendable. It provided the pilot with shields and a hyperdrive. In addition, the solar panels that powered the ship were on the inside of the wings only, rather than on both sides like the standard TIE. This meant the Advanced was more heavily armored, but the solar panels couldn't soak up as much light. Therefore, the solar panels only powered the weapons, sensors, and auxiliary systems, and the ship required fuel to run the engines. The wings also had S-foils that could fold around the cockpit when landing. The TIE Advanced X1 was the next step up from the V1. It also had shields and a hyperdrive, but no S-foils, and the solar panels were put back on the outside. Its biggest upgrade was in the targeting system, which was highly sophisticated and effective against enemy deflector shields. As of right now, only Darth Vader's personal TIE Advanced X1 has been seen, but according to Ultimate Star Wars, more of the ships were produced. The TIE Bomber was the Empire's main source of anti-emplacement air support. They could be seen throughout the galaxy as soon as a decade after the end of the Clone Wars. Like the standard TIE, they carried no shields and no hyperdrive. Their bombing bay could be armed with concussion missiles, orbital mines, or proton bombs. You might have seen a ship that looked like a TIE bomber in Rogue One, but those models were actually TIE landers. Instead of a bombing bay, the second hull was able to transport and deploy an entire company of stormtroopers. One can also be briefly seen in The Empire Strikes Back, delivering Captain Nita to the Executor. The TIE Interceptor was even faster and more maneuverable than the standard TIE, making it one of the fastest starfighters in the galaxy at the time. Still lacking shields and a hyperdrive, it made up for its defensive shortcomings by focusing on offense. 4 laser cannons were mounted to the wings, and some models had 2 additional installed on the cockpit itself. The Interceptor entered production after the Empire realized the Advanced X1 would be too costly to mass produce. By the time of the Battle of Endor, the starfighter made up about 20% of the Empire's fleet. The TIE Defender was another experimental design that went into development on Lothal about 2 years before the Battle of Yavin. They had shields and a hyperdrive, 6 laser cannons mounted on 3 wings, and a missile launcher. They were produced at the request of Grand Admiral Thrawn as a response to the more heavily defended starfighters used by the growing rebel threat. Yet another experimental fighter, the TIE Striker, was a specialized TIE variant designed for atmospheric flight, although it could fly in space. Its large central pod meant it could be used to transport supplies or personnel from orbit to the ground, or it could serve as a proton bombing bay. Within atmosphere, the Striker was faster and more heavily armed than the standard TIE. The wings could rotate between flight mode and attack mode. They were primarily built on Scarif, and after the Citadel's destruction, they were a rare sight in the galaxy. However, some Strikers were mentioned serving during the Battle of Jakku at the end of the Galactic Civil War. The TIE Reaper was similar in design to the TIE Striker. It was primarily used as a troop transport. Little else is currently known about the ship. The company that manufactured the TIE Fighter, Sian Fleet Systems, also provided organizations that fell under the umbrella of the Empire with their own TIE Fighters. For example, the Mining Guild received a specialized TIE Fighter design with a yellow color scheme and a notch cut out of their stabilizers, which improved their visibility but diminished their maneuverability. Jumping about 30 years into the future, the First Order still used TIE Fighters in their starfighter fleet. Their standard TIE model now had shields by default. They received upgraded engines and a darker paint job, but they were otherwise very similar to the standard TIE of the Empire. The First Order also produced a Special Forces variant of the TIE Fighter. This model had a hyperdrive as well as shields. They held 2 seats, one for a pilot and one for a gunner. In addition to the normal 2 laser cannons, it was also armed with a mag-pulse warhead launcher, and a dual heavy laser turret was mounted underneath the cockpit. As of right now, that's every single canon TIE model. I'm kind of expecting this might turn into a video I have to update yearly, depending on what else the new films or Star Wars Rebels introduces. Personally, I'm hoping for a return of the TIE Phantom. If you haven't seen my Legends version of this video, you can watch it right here. And if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out my Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.